What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics, and today we got a reaction to 10 great artists that have never been featured on our channel or featured in any sort of great way, brought to us by friend, longtime supporter, and patron of the channel, Slade Said. Thank you, Slade Said. Appreciate you. Appreciate all you bring. Appreciate all the patrons. You guys support us in any way. Check out the Patreon link below or the patron link on the end screen. When bringing this request, Slade Said, for my March list, I had a look at songs and bands on my rather long short list that I, for some reason, have never requested a reaction to. And when doing a quick search on your channel, it seemed that the artist bands have never had a reaction on the channel at all, which surprised me a good bit, as some of these artists are pretty big or certainly have a relatively large group of devoted fans. So I decided to choose 10 artist bands from the list that has never had a reaction on RTTC, but aren't necessarily obscure artists, because he brought an obscure artist top 10 that was fantastic last month. You need to go check out after this. And yeah, at the time of this filming, which is March of 2023, we have about 2,300 videos up. So many artists have been covered. And they're also covered in top 10s where they're not going to show up on a search. But I thought this is a really unique and clever list to put together. So let's get after it. If you haven't been with us before, the music will not be in the video, but it'll be at a Vimeo link below. So check that out. And at number 10, we got an artist I've never even heard of. The World is a Beautiful Place, and I Am No Longer Afraid to Die. Going with the song January 10th, 2014, off the album Harmlessness in 2015. Slade Said, our first entry on the list is the most recent song we'll get on the list. The band who must do well in the famous competition, but who has the longest band name in the world, hails from the city of Wilmington, Connecticut. What a name. It was formed in 2009. The creative peak so far came with their second album, this one, Harmlessness, from 2015, where this is the first single. The story of the song has been described by the band as the following. January 10th, 2014 is about retaliation against predators. The character in the song, Diana, is based on the story of a woman from Juarez, Mexico, who avenged unprosecuted and largely ignored sexual assaults being committed by bus drivers on their routes. The band has had a lot of members, not only as the sum of ex-members and current members, but also simultaneously at one point counting 9. 2 drummers and percussionists, several guitarists, a bass player, keyboard players, a cellist, and a violinist. Plus, some of the members played more instruments than just one. I saw them live, Slade Said, after the release of this album, and while I'm not totally sure of how many they were on stage, it was definitely a good number, probably 7 or 8. The only founding member left of the band is bass and keyboard player Josh Sire, but the rest of the current lineup, which counts 5 members, have been with the band since this album, since Harmlessness, including lead male vocalist David Bell and keyboard player and singer Katie Dvorak. So I'm going to have the lyrics up. Thanks again, Slade Said. All right, The World is a Beautiful Place, and I Am No Longer Afraid to Die, with their song January 10th, 2014. I thought this song was fantastic. I thought the mixture of the male vocals of David and the female vocals of Katie, and it followed this story exactly that I shared in the beginning, so I'm not really going to read the lyrics to her. I mean, verse 2, though, they found 2 heads hollowed out because she got off a bus and killed the guy. I mean, it's a true story, right, Diana? She got off the bus and killed the guy, a driver, and then the next day another driver was killed. And so then they wrote this article in this publication, and they interviewed some people, and this one woman said, they asked her, what would you do if you met her? And she said, I'd congratulate her and thank her. So, yeah, just as, a story of vigilantism when the authorities won't do anything, she took matters into her own hands. So a really good song, really interesting to write about this. But, I try to take these more, not just on the song itself. That's all I have to judge it by, but also just on the sound of the band. Great instrumentation. I like the instrumental break that it didn't go into some crazy guitar solo, because the lyrics are so serious that it was just kind of a chilled solo that just kind of fit with the vibe of the song. So really good choice. Next up at number 9, we got Concrete Blonde with the song Bloodletting, in parentheses, the vampire song, from the album of the same name in 1990. So like I said, for our next entry, we'll go back a bit in time. Concrete Blonde was a band from Hollywood, California. He played a style that can mostly be described as mixing alternative rock with gothic rock. The band's undisputed leader was singer-songwriter and occasional bass player Jonette Napolitano. I always have a hard time saying that name. They formed in 1982 before disbanding in 1994, and have later had a couple of reunions, but haven't been active since 2012. The band name was actually proposed to them by none other than Michael Stipe, of course, of R.E.M. fame, as he thought it was a good description of how the hard rock contrasted with the introspective lyrics. All right. Their self-titled album was released in 1986, but their most acclaimed and successful album was this album from 1990. from where, of course, Slade said picked the title track, although the single Joey is by far their most famous song and the only song I know of Concrete Blonde is Joey. Let's check it out. All right, Concrete Blonde, Bloodletting, in parentheses, the vampire song, which Johnette said in an interview that song was based on her love of the city of New Orleans, which you obviously hear in the lyricism, and her enjoyment of Anne Rice's novel, The Vampire Lestat, which had just been released. So I think this song, just the overall atmosphere of it, fits perfect, right? The music is, I don't want to say dark, but sort of dark, and her delivery kind of gets that mood through. You know, it's a serious song. So I really did enjoy it. Quite different than Joey, right? Which is catchy. Not catchy in a sing-along way, but catchy. But this one is just more menacing. But I really did enjoy it. Next up, we have Danzig and Devil's Plaything from the album Danzig 2, Lucifuge in 1990. I got to tell you, as a Christian, this might be an interesting listen. Slade said Danzig, the band, is the band lead singer, led by singer and songwriter Glenn Danzig, who before he formed Danzig had been the lead vocalist of Sam Hain and influential punk rock band Misfits, who were fantastic. The band Danzig was formed in 1987 and plays a blues-based kind of gothic hard rock / heavy metal with sometimes diabolical lyrics, although they're mostly used as a kind of horror movie shock effect rather than should be taken literally or seriously. His voice has been described as a hard rock version of Elvis Presley, and so it came as no surprise that he delivered an Elvis covers album. Danzig sings Elvis in 2020. Okay. Unfortunately, his once great voice is not what it used to be, and what could have been a great album turned out to be, well, not a great album. Let's leave it at that. On Lucifuge, he could still sing, and for this list, I went with, of course, the song Devil's Plaything. Devil's Plaything, Danzig. Glenn Danzig stated he wrote the song about control over another person, and I should have told you that up front, because when you listen to it, you can see that, right? You can see it from the very start. Love is a flame, a devil's thing, a violent storm about to be born. Just look in these eyes, see all the lies, all these things you see, you cannot deny. And this flame that burns inside. If you get too close, burn you alive. Just look in these eyes and see if they lie. All these words I speak, you cannot deny. So, yeah, the way love can so often turn to control or just insane dependence on the other person, which then leads to control. But I thought it was really well done. I liked his voice. It took me a second to get used to his voice. Then I really liked his voice, and I thought the arrangement was great. Next up at number 7, we have Fishbone and their song Sunless Saturday from the album The Reality of My Surroundings in 1991. So like I said, for our next artist, we find a band who is very difficult to place genre-wise. Throughout their career, they have played ska punk, funk rock, soul, alternative rock, funk metal, alternative / experimental metal, and more. Fishbone, the band, was formed in 1979 in Los Angeles, California, and achieved their greatest commercial success in the late 80s and early 90s, after which they had a lot of personnel changes, resulting in less frequent output and a general decline in quality. The last studio album, Still Stuck in Your Throat, was released in 2006. Their best albums, to my mind, Slade says, and probably also the general consensus, was 1988's Truth and Soul and 1991's this one, The Reality of My Surroundings. While Truth and Soul was ska and rock based with some funk elements thrown in, The Reality of My Surroundings was even more diverse, where the heavy elements had a harder edge with clear metal undertones. The final song of the album, this one, was an example of this and also pointed towards their next album. Give a monkey a brain and he'll swear he's the center of the universe, which is an album that is generally known as their heavy metal album. I found that this song is their highest charting single. Sunless Saturday, Fishbone, obviously much more up-tempo. I thought the rhythm section was fantastic, in particular the drumming. But I mean, it just tells the story of basically, it's a sunless Saturday, right? It starts out describing how things aren't so great in that first verse and kind of how things are just not going well. The chorus, chase these clouds away. I hate this sunless Saturday. The bridge, freedom come for us now. Light our sky. Burn away these clouds. So it's just things aren't going well for this guy, not for him and for everything around him. But I think the band on this were fantastic. So great song to choose on Slade Said's part. Next up at number 6, we got a band that I've heard of, but I don't know if I've ever heard any of their music. We got Jellyfish going with the song That Is Why from the album Belly Button in 1990. So I said, next up, we have a heavily 1960s influenced band. Jellyfish was a short-lived band from San Francisco, California, who released 2 full studio albums before disbanding. Why this band did not become huge is one of pop music's larger mysteries, as their flair for writing catchy tunes was far above the average pop/rock band. But the fact is they broke up in 1994 due to poor record sales, as well as singer and drummer Andy Sturmer's distaste for being a front man and general tension in the band between primarily Sterner and the other members. Isn't that why most bands break up, right? They have plenty of good songs to choose from, especially considering they only released 2 studio albums, but I decided to go for one of the singles of the debut album. That is why. If you like this song, you will love the album. I found this was the 2nd single released from this album. That is why, Jellyfish. Very rich, melody-wise. That is why. The way he delivers that is fantastic. And the song itself, though, it's hard to admit it's true. I've come to depend on you. You and your angelic shout. Loud enough for 2. And then the chorus right away, right after that first verse. And that is why I confide in you the truth this time. That is why I just can't go on and live this lie. And then yesterday was all was right as rain, but now the forecast is not. So it's getting worse. And then he gets into another verse, the chorus and the bridge. And when you say I trust in you, I promise you the truth. And when you say I bet you won't, I will. Ain't it better in the end? And you get that nice guitar solo. We kind of repeat throughout. So I thought it was really good. And too bad Andy Sturmer couldn't get along with the rest of the bandmates, right? And they couldn't give us some more stuff. All right, we're halfway through this list. Next up at number 5, we got Fugazi, the song Rend It from In on the Kill Taker in 1993. Slade said, we changed style a good bit for this pick. From jangly 60s influence rock to one of the most influential hardcore punk bands, Washington, D.C.'s Fugazi. Fugazi was a sort of underground supergroup. The members had previously been involved with major punk rock bands such as Minor Threat, Embrace, and Rites of Spring. The band's leader was guitar singer and record label owner Ian MacKaye. Fugazi was known not only for their musical output, but probably to an extent for their general ethics when it came to ticket prices, LP, CD prices, alcohol, and drugs, and more. I mean, just some fantastic stuff here. Early on, they decided they didn't want to play at venues that charged more than $5 for admission. They would have to increase this a bit later, but they were always focused on keeping ticket prices as low as possible. They insisted that CDs should have a sticker stating that you shouldn't pay more than $7 for the CD. They would only play venues where there was no 21 years plus restriction. They didn't consume alcohol or use drugs, and they requested the audience to not slam dance, and would ask security to escort a person from the concert if he slam danced, and give them an envelope containing the admission fee as a refund. That's unbelievable, man. At one point, they were offered a very large contract, allegedly $10 million to sign the contract by a major record label, who also promised that the band would keep their creative freedom and no pressure would be made by the label for the band to become more commercial sounding. It was an extremely good offer for what was still a small band, commercially speaking. It should come as no surprise, however, that the band refused the offer, since they probably rightfully believed it would mean that their focus on ticket and CD prices, as well as refusing to sell merchandise of any sort, would have to be abandoned. So Fugazi was very much doing things differently to what the average punk rock band was doing, or any other band for that matter. Musically, they were also not your standard punk rock band. Now, I called Fugazi a hardcore punk band at the start. That's probably not a fair description of the band, as they were much more than that. They included various genres in the music and was a band with a lot more musical skills than most bands within rock or punk music. They were formed in 1986, and since 2003, the band has been on an indefinite hiatus. It's 20 years ago at the time of this filming. They released their debut full-length album, Repeater, in 1990, and while it isn't their best-selling album, it's considered to be perhaps their best, or certainly one of their best. The commercial breakthrough was their third album, this one, In on the Kill Taker. It was originally produced by Steve Albini, but the band weren't satisfied with the results, so they re-recorded it with new producers. So that's what we're doing this song from, Rend It. Fugazi or Fugazi, I've heard it said both ways, and I should have said that at the start. I mean, when they introduced this at a concert, they said it's simply a song about perversion. So you can kind of see that. I'm not really going to break down the lyrics too much. I thought it was really well done. I thought the energy, obviously the guitar work on here, is fantastic. And I'm pretty sure I listened to one of their albums in our album draft series, but I just can't remember which one. Next up, we have Blue Oyster Cult, or BOC for a lot of their fans, and The Vigil from their album Mirrors in 1979. We're rewinding it back here. Slade said, for our next pick, we find a band that I'm truly surprised to be able to include on this list, which covers bands or artists that have not been featured yet in any videos on RTTC. I know for a fact that the band, and specifically this song, has been covered in a live session, in a live stream, as I requested it, Slade said. So yeah, I was thinking, like, I told Trey, I said, man, I can't believe we haven't done one of these. It's like, I think it was in a live stream. So Slade said they brought it, but the band does not appear to be included in any song battles or top 10s or the like. And that is good news to me, because I then had the chance to include them here. And notably select a song from an album is considered by the average Blue Oyster Cult fan as one of their weaker albums, namely the album Mirrors from 1979. I'm not the biggest BOC fan, in the world, admittedly, but to me, Mirrors is one of their best albums, if not, in fact, the best. And the song The Vigil is on my personal top 10 of all-time greatest BOC songs. All right, let's check it out. The Vigil, Blue Oyster Cult, or BOC, as many of their fans refer to them. I thought this song was really good. It was really a journey. You know, it's about extraterrestrial life, right? I mean, that's what he's talking about in the start. He's got a vision and a purple vision, and he's trying to get some sort of, I think, photographic evidence of this to prove to everyone. And they're going to kind of come back and they're going to be here. Well, I'm no poet, but I can't be fooled. The lies don't count. The whispers do. I hear the whispers on the wind. They say the earth is fallen due. We run in circles. Our days are numbered. Every night I look away to the heavens and I pray, come to us, come to us. So like we're sick and we're tired and we're dying to meet you because we bit off more than we can chew. In other words, we need some help here. And I guess he's saying only the aliens, only something that's not of this earth can help us, which as a Christian, I agree with that. Not that it's going to be an alien, but it's an interesting song. Next up, we have Saga, the song Images, in parentheses, chapter 1. Images at Twilight 1979 is the album. Our next artist, Slade said, is also a band that was formed in the 70s. Saga, a progressive hard rock band from Oakville, Ontario, Canada, is a long-living band that, apart from the short spell in the early 80s, has never been big in the USA, but has experienced some success in other parts of the world, mainly Europa and particularly Germany. The band plays a heavy synthesizer-based kind of progressive rock. Their first 3 albums are somewhat similar in style before they changed it a bit for their 4th and most successful album, Worlds Apart, which spawned a couple of singles that did well in the US charts. On the Loose reached number 26, while second single, Wind Him Up, reached 64. Following a successful world tour, they recorded a very good live album before returning to the studio to record the next album. To me, this is where my love of the band pretty much ends, as the success of the previous album led to a stylistic change away from the sci-fi pompous, thick keyboard layers that made the band unique in sound, while instead opting for a more slick sound that sounds very inspired with what fellow Canadians Rush were doing in the 80s. Hey man, everybody was jumping on the keyboard layering in the 80s. At least 4 albums plus a live album that I absolutely love, which is still enough to make me a fan of the band. Even in most of the remaining discography, 17 or 18 albums pretty much leaves me cold. For this list, I went with the song Images Chapter 1 from the album Images at Twilight from 1979. You notice the Chapter 1 part of the name. What Saga did was that on most records, there would be 1 or 2 songs which all had a chapter in their name. It was not consecutively, so you would get chapter 1 first, then 2, then 3, etc. It made no sense for us fans back then, but the chapters were all part of a great story scattered throughout a number of albums in seemingly random order, and finally concluding it with 3 chapters on 2003's Marathon album. Hey, that's pretty cool right there, right? That hidden Easter egg. They then performed the entire story on the subsequent tour with all 16 chapters played in the right order. The story revolves around an alien race, here we go again, who had monitored the Earth's progress and has become fearful of its self-destruction. They decided that someone intelligent had to be put in charge of making sure that it wouldn't end up bad, and they decided that Einstein should be revived in a new body to take over the world and correct what went wrong. His brain is apparently being preserved for study at the Smithsonian Institute, Slade says, so maybe that could happen. When that happens, I shall not reveal here, he says. All right, Images, Chapter 1 from Saga. Since it's part of a bigger story, it's kind of laying the groundwork, right? So we can't really figure out what's going on. I guess this guy's alive, but some of the illusions seem like he's dead, but I guess he's alive, but he's just kind of homeless or by himself. He's isolated. There he sits drawing images on the causeway with small bits of chalk. He sketches all the lost days. And the rain keeps coming down, wipes them from the ground. So the frustration of that. So whether it's, literal or metaphorically speaking, I don't know. And the rain keeps coming down, watching his life drown, dashing past the people circle around him with a laugh. A bottle must have drowned him. So probably homeless. And the rain keeps coming down, wipes him from the ground. None remain, not the friends or possessions who's to blame with all those good intentions. One picture did remain, a face that had his name, a body lies, no pain, under blankets of warm rain. So I think he's an alive homeless guy, but it could be anything. And you got to know the story, right? But great keyboard work, just great atmosphere. You get lost in the song. I just found myself just kind of vibing in the song. It's a longer song. I did enjoy that one. Next up, we have Townes Van Zandt. The song Waiting Around to Die from his self-titled album in 1969. So I said our next artist is another one I was very surprised to find he had no reactions on the channel yet. Now, I swear there's a reaction to Townes Van Zandt. I don't know what. I just know the name. But maybe I just listened to this album, the album draft, because I asked Trey, he's like, I don't know, I think we did it on a live stream. I don't know, man. I could have sworn I researched, but whatever. While Townes Van Zandt wasn't massively popular when he was active, he's later received a huge lift and acclaim with a lot of major artists and bands citing him as a huge influence. He was born in Fort Worth, Texas, just about 50 miles that way from me, in 1944, and died January 1st, 1997 from cardiac arrhythmia caused by health problems stemming from years of substance abuse, mainly alcohol and heroin. He was a singer-songwriter within mostly country, folk, and country rock. His debut album, released in 1968, I had it at 69, was a good, if unremarkable, start to his career. There were some absolute highlights on the album, but the production lets it down, which Townes himself also thought why he recorded a good number of the songs on later albums. Our pick here, Waiting Around to Die, is one example of that, as it first appeared on his debut album, but later was re-recorded for his third album. Oh, there we go. The self-titled, which was released in 1969. And that version is what we go with here. I found this was one of his most famous and certainly his darkest songs. It's a fictional account that was according to his first wife, written in a closet in their first few months of marriage. In an interview with Van Zandt, Paul Zollo mentioned, "You said Waiting Around to Die was your first serious song. You can't get much more serious than that one." And Townes replied, "I have a few others like that I don't play all the time. I have to watch that when I do shows. I have to stay away from that side because nobody wants to hear blues on blues on blues." All right, what an introduction. All right, what a story. Waiting Around to Die, Townes Van Zandt. He talks about the troubles he's had in life, but it's better to do this than just wait around to die. So I guess keep a gambling, lots of booze and lots of rambling. It's easier than just waiting around to die. So that's how every verse ends. Well, it's easier than just waiting around to die. So he starts off kind of painting the picture of who he is. And then at one time he had friends, a ma and a pa. His dad beat his mom with a belt and then took off. She told him to take care of me, headed down to Tennessee. What's easier than just waiting around to die? He came of age, found a girl in Tuscaloosa. She cleaned him out right. She took him for everything he had. Why? Tried to kill the pain. I bought some wine and hopped a train. Then a friend said he knew where some easy money was. We robbed the man and brother did we fly. But the posse caught up with me and drugged me back. And it's 2 long years around waiting to die. But then in the last verse, he gets free. But I'm out of prison. I got me a friend at last. He don't drink or steal or cheat or lie. So he actually has a real friend, right? But you find out his name is Codeine. He's the nicest thing I've seen. Well, together we're going to wait around and die. He says that twice. So codeine obviously is an opiate. And I was reading when I was researching that codeine used to be popular back in the day because it calmed the outlaws, right? It gave you a sense of calm. So they took it all the time. So you learn something every day, as the old saying goes, but a really good song. And number 1 on Slade Sad's list, we got Motorhead, Brotherhood of Man, from the album The World Is Yours in 2010. "We are Motorhead and we play rock and roll." Those are the words that band leader Lemmy used to say when Motorhead started a concert. "Motorhead is probably the band I've seen the most times live," that's what Slade said, maybe equaled by Steve Wynn / The Dream Syndicate. Despite always being linked with heavy metal, Lemmy never felt that Motorhead was a heavy metal band. He felt that they had much more in common with a punk rock band like The Damned than, say, Iron Maiden. But most of all, he felt the band played rock and roll. A very dirty version of rock and roll, mind you. Motorhead was formed in 1975 in London, England, although Lemmy himself was originally from the city Stoke. The band was formed by Lemmy after he was kicked out of the hippie space rock band Hawkwind, where he'd been a member from 71 to 75 and actually wrote one of their biggest hits, Silver Machine. Before joining Hawkwind, Lemmy had been a roadie for none other than Jimi Hendrix, after he shared a flat with Noel Redding, the bassist of the Jimi Hendrix Experience. The band's first official release was a self-titled debut from 1977, and their final album was 2015's Bad Magic. In total, they released 23 studio albums. Motorhead enjoyed some commercial success in the early 80s with albums like Ace of Spades and the live album No Sleep Till Hammersmith. And years later, the pro wrestler Triple H used their song The Game as his entrance music, just as a couple of other songs have been used by Triple H in various circumstances. Triple H also spoke at Lemmy's funeral, so obviously that song, I know that song as a former hardcore wrestling fan. While Lemmy was the founding leader of the band, he was also the only member present throughout the band's existence. The original lineup consisted of Lemmy on bass and vocals, Fast Eddie Clark on guitars, and Phil Filthy Animal Taylor on drums. This trio lasted until 1982 when Fast Eddie Clark decided to leave the band. He was replaced by Brian Robbo Robertson, or Robbo probably, from Thin Lizzy, who worked on the album Another Perfect Day. This move was very controversial at the time, as Brian Robertson did not look like a Motorhead member at all. Plus, he straight up refused to play some of the most beloved Motorhead songs live. Motorhead fans didn't like him, and so his stay in the band only lasted for one album. He was replaced by two guitarists, Michael Wurzel-Burston and Phil Campbell, making Motorhead a four-piece for the first time. Drummer Phil Taylor exited the band for 3 years and came back before being kicked out of the band permanently in 1992. He was replaced by former King Diamond drummer Mikkey Dee, who continued in the band until they disbanded. Wurzel left Motorhead in 1995, after which Motorhead was again a trio, and this lineup, Lemmy on bass and vocals, Phil on guitars, and Mikkey on drums, would continue until the end of the band. Picking a song for a band with such a large discography is obviously tricky. I was very tempted to go for a song from their first classic lineup, but instead I chose to go with a song from their last lineup, which, after all, was the lineup that lasted the longest, 21 years, if only counting the trio. From that period, I decided to pick this song, Brotherhood of Man, which I think is sadly relevant today, considering what is going on in certain parts of Europe. So I got to tell you, it's crazy. I don't think I've ever listened to any Motorhead besides, the Triple H song and things I've come across. I just don't think I have for some reason. So let's do it. Brotherhood of Man, Motorhead. What a great song, man. Obviously, the guitar work, the instrumentation's fantastic. But I'll tell you what, man, the lyrics on this one are fire. And I see what Slade said just about it kind of being relevant in today's world. Blood on our hands, we cannot hope to wash them clean. History is mystery. Do you know what that means? Slaughter, kill, and fighting still, and murdered where we stand. Our legacy is lunacy. Brotherhood of Man. We are worse than animals. We hunger for the kill. We put our faith in maniacs. Isn't that the truth? The triumph of the will. We kill for money, wealth, and lust. For this we should be damned. We are disease upon the world. Brotherhood of Man. That is, those are some of the best lyrics in this entire list. Just great stuff right there, man. Go Motorhead. Now we're going to get to my faves. As I always say on these types of lists, I don't know the discography. Slade said does. But I've got to pick kind of off of that. My honorable mentions, Danzig, Jellyfish, Fugazi. Faves, the first, The World is a Beautiful Place and I'm No Longer Afraid to Die. Townes Van Zandt, what a song that was, Waiting Around to Die. And Motorhead, man, who knew? Who knew? I had never listened to Motorhead. I guess I should have been. So fantastic list curated by Slade Said. Let us know what your faves are on this list. Usually I ask you what else we should include, but that would take some work on your part. You'd have to use the little search bar up there to see what we have vids of and what we've done. So I'm not going to ask you that kind of work, but let me know what your faves are on this one. Once again, appreciate it. Slade Said, I know it takes a lot of work to curate all your lists, but particularly this one because you had to really search some stuff out on the channel. Until next time, guys, I will see you.